67 minutes once a year. That is what we are told is enough to honor Nelson Mandela's legacy. But with poverty rising, corruption rotting our institutions, and femicide claiming the lives of women like clockwork, we really have to ask ourselves, is this really enough? My question here, good people, is whether Nelson Mandela Day is still relevant, or has it just become another symbol for masking a system that's in crisis? So let's talk about it, and as always, let's speak truth to power. Hello, good people, and welcome back to another episode. I am so very happy and excited to have you here today and to discuss this very interesting topic today. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of things, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We are well on our way to 100 subscribers. So thank you to everyone who has joined along so far, who has engaged, who has commented, who has taken the conversation further. I see you and I totally appreciate it. So with that, let's get into what I want to talk about today, and that is discussing Mandela Day. If you're not familiar, I'm going to give a brief history on what it actually is and how it is that we South Africans don't necessarily have a public holiday on this day, but rather we commemorate the legacy of Nelson Mandela in a very unique way. So to start off, it's important to note that the UN officially recognized Mandela Day in the year of 2009. And the idea behind it really was that each person would give 67 minutes of service. And this represented 1 year, it presented every year that Madiba gave in public service. His call to action was really a simple one. It was for us to take action, to inspire change, and to make every day a Mandela Day. It wasn't just meant to be a celebration, but it was meant to be a movement. This was his way of making a citizen-driven response to injustice, inequality, and isolation. It was a way of turning Madiba's sacrifice into service. And so Nelson Mandela's legacy, as powerful as it also is still very complicated. He is one man who stood for peace and reconciliation and for a non-racial democracy. He also forgave the unforgivable and, really allowed for us as a country to start our healing journey, right? He also gave a very specific warning to us all, and it says, as long as poverty, injustice, and gross inequality persist in our world, no one can truly rest. So decades later, we find ourselves in this very interesting place. And that is the fact that millions still go to bed hungry. State institutions are crumbling under corruption. Women are murdered daily with impunity. And our youth unemployment is one of the highest in the world. So we really now have to ask yourself, have we done justice to Madiba's legacy, or is it just something that we have made convenient for all of us? And with that, I want us to really dive into whether this Mandela Day has become a symbol for change or rather a solution. Let's be honest, 67 minutes will never truly be enough to fix anything, right? Yes, you can paint a wall at a school, you can donate blankets, you can serve food at a shelter. That's all good and kind, but my question is it really transformative? And it isn't if it just ends there. Not if we just use it as a way to feel good once a year and then for the rest of the year remain silent on pertinent issues. Not if we use it as a band-aid to cover a bullet wound that our nation has. Because the truth of the matter, my friends, is that South Africa is bleeding, and 67 minutes is simply not going to be enough to stop the pus of political delay, violence, and inequality that is oozing from our very wounded nation. We really need to start asking ourselves whether these acts of service are building sustainable change, or are they just photo ops for brands and institutions. We really have to get into the nitty-gritty of things about whether we are volunteering solutions or we are distracting ourselves from a crumbling system. I fear that this is what Nelson Mandela has become. It has become a performance of patriotism in a country that is slowly losing its soul. We are posting selfies with school kids whilst ignoring the problem of overcrowded classrooms. We clean streets, but the very people who still live on these streets as homeless folk return to them the very next day. We raise awareness on gender-based violence, yet women are still re-traumatized in police stations and courtrooms. I personally do not believe that this is the freedoms and the legacy that Mandela fought for. He didn't risk his life for us to turn justice into a PR campaign. He didn't endure Robin Hood for us to use his name and mask our moral fatigue. Mandela's legacy is much deeper than that. It was never meant to be comfortable. It was meant to confront. It was meant to challenge. It was meant to dismantle systems and not decorate them. We are facing a crisis of courage as a nation, because trust me, I know it's much easier to donate 67 Rand than to demand accountability. It's so much easier to serve soup than to question power. It is way easier to just act like we care for 67 minutes instead of committing ourselves for 365 days. But the reality is that this moment is not just a moment in history. It's a moment that is calling for a movement. So what now? I am one person. I don't have all the answers, but I do have some questions that I ask myself, and I think that we should all maybe take some time to consider asking as well. And that is whether we can turn our 67 minutes into 67 weeks where we have sustainable change for our community. And that is whether we can use our platforms to call out injustice and not just celebrate charity. We also need to ask ourselves if we can educate ourselves more on the issues that we claim to care about, and also if we can do better in holding our leaders accountable, both at a local and a national level. But most importantly, the deep question that we need to ask ourselves anytime we are engaging in anything that has to do with Mandela Day is whether this initiative that I am doing, is it helping or is it just hiding the problem? Let's not just do things that will feel good. Let's do change that will inevitably create a change in our systems. So yes, 67 minutes is definitely not going to be enough, not for a nation like ours, and this is not what the moment is called for. But maybe it's a good start. It's a doorway, it's a spark, right, for something greater that needs to come out of it. But I would just like to urge us all to not make Mandela's legacy a simple holiday. Let's not make it a habit, but rather let's honor him, not with charity, but with change. And with that, I want to wish everyone a happy 2025 Mandela Day. Now let's go build something that lasts. And before I close off this segment, I do want to know from all of you, what does Mandela's legacy mean to all of you guys? I really am interested to hear your opinions, since I have shared mine. And with that, we're going to move on to the next segment of the show, which is Women Across Africa. So we are now in Women Across Africa, and the issue that I want to speak on this week is based on a forum that happened a few days ago, and it's on something that is really close to my heart, and that is the issue of data. I think many of us always just think that data is useful for policy or for academia, but I think that it is way more significant and important than that. data allows for narratives to turn into numbers. And what do I mean by this? I mean that data enables us to have the adequate information that we need to give the right diagnoses on problems, but more than that, to be able to actually also understand what the problem actually is. If you do not have the numbers, you are essentially walking blind, right? And so if you're a bit lost at what I'm talking about, I am talking about the Africa Gender Statistics Forum. And this forum was held with a lot of African leaders who were basically there to urge for a renewed commitment to quality gender data. And the foundation, or rather the background of this forum, was based on the fact that there are growing setbacks when it comes to gender inequality and increasing financial restraints. And it's really an unfortunate thing to think about how there are not enough, financial resources to be able to ensure that, we are able to get the adequate data and information about what is happening in the lives of women and girls across the continent, because this is not a homogeneous group, guys. I think women across the continent and young girls have very different lives, very different demands, very different expectations for their own lived realities, right? And I want to just list some of the organizers of this forum, and it was co-organized by the Cote d'Ivoire National Statistics Agency, the African Union Commission, the African Development Bank Group, the Economic Commission for Africa, UN Women, Open Data Watch, and it was co-founded by the Korean Africa Economic Cooperation Trust Fund. So essentially the forum was to gather different experts and leaders to basically try and explore various ways in which Africa's data systems can be built in terms of their capacity, and also how various policies can be made to ensure that they are able to advance the cause of gender inequality, or gender equality rather. So I just want to read a few quotes from some of the leaders who were there, which I believe just were like really exceptional in highlighting what this initiative is about, and most importantly its significance. The first is that statistics provide a solid foundation for good decision making, and gender statistics are critical for identifying vulnerabilities amongst women, girls, men and boys, and responding appropriately. This was from William, who is the chief for demographic and social statistics section of the UN Economic Commission for Africa. Another quote that I also wanted to read states that data is key to change. Yet in 15 African countries, only 52% of gender-related indicators clearly differentiate between women and men. This gender gap undermines progress in maternal health, political participation, and violence prevention. Now, before I make a comment on this, I just want to give us a bit of a scenario, or just paint a picture for us. In any society across the world, our societies are evenly split between men and women. Yeah, some societies will have maybe 52% of women, or others will have 55% of men, but you ultimately get the point I'm trying to make. And so I always ask myself how we can ever expect a nation to fully recognize its potential, to fully develop in a holistic, sustainable manner that benefits everyone, if half of that population is lagging behind, if half of that population's needs and demands are not considered, if half of that population is not even visible in spaces of decision making and significant places that shape the future and advance that society. I'll give us a few seconds to think about it. Yeah, my thoughts exactly. If anyone does have an answer to this, please let me know. I would be so open to share. And so when you hear and you read of these kind of realities, the fact that 15 countries only have 52 indicators that somehow try to differentiate men and women, it really is a cause for concern, and it really helps you realize that alongside our issues of corruption, bad governance, illicit financial flows, climate change, the fact that issues of gender are not taken seriously and not put at the forefront like how they're supposed to will ultimately always serve as an obstacle for us realizing the kind of Africa and the continent that we want to have. And if we do not take this seriously right now, Yeah, I just don't know. I don't understand. But anyways, guys, I've linked to this article below. Please take a read at it. This forum has left some amazing recommendations and suggestions on things that can be done to change this, and I think it is really amazing. I don't want to take too long because, as we know, we're trying to make our videos more shorter and more impactful. So click the link in the bio, and I think, yeah, let's just educate ourselves about these issues. Okay, so with that, we are going to move on to Woman of the Week. We are now in Woman of the Week. And as you can just see from my excitement, this part of the show is oftentimes like my favorite part, simply because it is it's the part of the show where we are able to highlight and give a round of applause to women and girls out there who are doing exceptional work. I think it is always good and needed for us to highlight the great things that are happening, because the world be going through some crazy things. Okay, and so this Woman of the Week for this week takes us to Congo, and we meet a young lady by the name of Jenny Onya, and she is using AI to transform African women livestock farmers. And she's basically enabling them to be able to get new sources of income for their livelihoods. And I think it is just so innovative. It's so genius. It's just like mind-blowing. So I'm gonna read a bit from the article, simply because there was not a video that I could find of the young lady, but you can see the article here, you can see her picture, and please, as always, it's linked down below. Read the whole article. This is just work that she's doing that's ahead of our time, and it's something that I think we should all be in the know about. So basically, Jenny's innovation is dealing with a challenge that is staggering, and that challenge is the fact that sub-Saharan Africa has around 200 million smallholder farmers, and a significant proportion of these raise livestock. Women account for up to 60% of these farmers, representing an economic force of 80 to 120 million rural female livestock keepers. But the unfortunate reality is that this force remains virtually invisible to the financial system. And there's a number of reasons that account for why this is actually happening, and the article does a great job in highlighting some of these, but I just want to speak on one of them, right? And that is the fact that there is no reliable way, right, of women to document their herd and prove that they own 10 or 15 or 5 cows, right? And also, traditional methods such as ear tags are often fragile and easy to falsify, thus making verification by a banker nearly impossible and turning a woman's most valuable asset into an invalid guarantee. Now, as we know, if you are going to go and take a loan, especially as a business, they have to be able to put that credit on some kind of asset, right? In the case that you are not able to pay it back, right, the bank must be able to repossess something, right, to make up for the investment that it's made. But now, traditional modes of system were not really reliable in giving, financial institutions the trust that is needed for them to be able to give out this credit. And guys, as we know, a lot of women who are small business farm holders, they are not able to penetrate into the formal market, simply because they don't have the financial support that they need to be able to further their horizons and really scale up some of the work that they are doing. And so, to further reiterate this point, I just want to share something that Jenny has said to basically summarize the significance of this innovation that she has been able to do. And if you don't understand it, essentially what she has done is that she has used AI and she has codified it to be able to identify each livestock and list out its unique traits. This way, farmers are able to verify the kind of livestock that they have and the amount of livestock that they have. And from the financial institute side, Jenny gives us such an amazing summary of how this is a game changer for them being able to have the necessary trust to these farmers to give them the credit that's needed. And she says, for a financial institution, it is no longer a rough estimate, but concrete and reliable data. We are no longer talking about an informal profile, but a digital asset that is registered, verified, and integrated into a structured portfolio. Trust is built on data, and it can finally open up doors to credit. And so I think that's just like a beautiful tie with the former segment that I had, which is talking about just, the importance of data. So as you can see here, data is not only just useful for policy as well as for academia. Data is used in our everyday lives. And I just love how this innovation was able to tackle something that has been a long-standing issue to not allow, financial institutions to tap into a major resource that we have as a continent. And now they can do that with literally a click of a button. And so as I wrap up, I want to leave us with the message that Jenny has for us all. And she says, she calls on financial institutions to invest in high potential local economies, which are often led by women. And she says to young African women dreaming of innovating, she offers her own journey as proof. Dare to create, even in sectors where you are not expected to. If I can build disruptive solutions from a cell phone and a herd of cows, you too can reinvent what no one has yet dared to imagine. And I just think that is so beautiful, because oftentimes when we think about our issues here in Africa and how you really just cannot relate them to a lot of other things that are happening across the world, you can really think that, oh my God, like, how are we even going to get to, this kind of development and, this future that we are wanting for ourselves. But what I love about the story is that beyond it being an African solution for an African problem, it shows us how some of our daily lived realities, which are serving as challenges, don't have to necessarily always be seen as points of limitations, but rather they can be points of us to be able to pivot into something that will be powerful and a first of its kind. And that's the beautiful thing about daring to imagine. So with that, guys, I really do hope that you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, take this conversation further. Don't leave it in the screen over here. Do continue it down in the comment sections. I do love seeing everything that you guys have to say and engaging with you all. With that, thank you for sticking and staying till this far. And I will see you guys very soon. Bye.